Um, I've been very committed to wellness and accepting less difficult tasks. There we go. I've been really invested in mental wellness and the promotion of growth and love and accessibility when earned, and distance when necessary, and proximity when required when it comes to people. Um, I have allowed myself to be very vulnerable, and I have been allowing myself to really just sit in humility over the last couple of months, and it has done a tremendous help with my mental health and mental wellness overall. I think a lot of times, especially like present day, it's very easy to promote self-help and self-care and wellness and mental health as a bubble bath with candles and you know the clean house with the candlelit aesthetic and yoga and therapy or whatever, right? This aesthetic that we have grown very close to, but have seen less effectiveness when we tap into it is really um, detrimental. But it's also really just an easy way to let people know um, that we're okay, right? It used to be, and it still is, but it used to be when somebody would say, "How are you doing?" And even when we weren't doing okay, we would say, "Doing well," or "Blessed and highly favored." And it was so refreshing to hear somebody talk about why they used to do that. I actually had the opportunity to listen to that a couple of weeks ago. And they said that they did it because when people would ask them how they were doing, and they would actually say how they were doing, then people would become uncomfortable and become very awkward. And not only would that person have to go home and still deal with everything that they shared with this person after being asked, "How are you doing?" They would also have to deal with the fact that they just had this really awkward experience where they tried to be vulnerable and um, have a moment, a human moment in humility with this person, and that person actually just made it worse. Not because they don't care, but because oftentimes, and it's been said plenty of times before, but when people ask us how we're doing, they don't really want to hear our problems, right? That's just another greeting. That's just another hello, right? So the person went on to say that they just made the conscious and intentional decision to start saying they were doing great after a person asked them how they were doing, because when they said they were doing great, then the conversation would continue on in a regular, normal, more acceptable manner, right? They realized that it was better just to smile and wave so they could at least have some type of human interaction and at least walk away with a positive human interaction than to really answer that question for what it is and to walk away still having to face the issues that they shared and also having to process the awkwardness that they had to go through. And I thought that that was really profound because we still do that. And now, from a social media standpoint, when we're really going through something, that's our outcry. That's how we cry out. I said our outcry, but that's how we cry out, right? I haven't been on social media since April. No, I take that back. Since December of last year. That's when I completely erased all of my social media other than YouTube. And I don't know what the climate is now, but I would assume that it hasn't changed much. Just, from conversations that I have with people in my social circles who are still on social media. But I do feel like when people post those self-care posts and those, in therapy posts and working on me and mental wellness posts, is really a way to let their timeline know I'm doing well, but I'm not okay. We've clinged on to that aesthetic, and we do those little social media suggestions, but as I said, they're really not effective. And once I realized that, I just had to take action, and so I did. And one of the things that I have noticed with me is that, the quality of people that you keep around you is very important. And at the end of the day, if you come to a conclusion or you realize that you got somebody around you that just shouldn't really be there, and I won't say shouldn't be there, maybe they shouldn't be as close to you in proximity, or maybe there should be some distance between you and that person. Maybe that person shouldn't have, the advantage of accessibility to you. You can't consider the us in that moment. You got to consider the you. And it's very important to have a mental wellness coach, aka a therapist, that can give you the tools on how to work through that, and even sometimes how to approach that, because who you have around you is really, 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 really conducive to how well you are, or your mental wellness. From family to friends to coworkers to people in your social circle. The Bible teaches us that friendship is optional, but it is very important, because we need people, in our lives, but we don't need the wrong people in our lives. And I've found over time that it is much better to take the pace of patience and spend some time alone until you get to cross paths with good quality people. I'm not talking about going to isolation and stay hermited up in the house, because that doesn't help anything, right? I can talk from that standpoint for hours if you let me. That doesn't help anything. But I am talking about, meeting people and taking your time with really getting to know them, but still allowing yourselves to have those social engagements and social interactions, but doing it at a pace that allows you to really, really incorporate quality people in your life. Because I'm telling you, once you have quality people in your life, things just change, and it's going to be very hard for you to go back to the standard of friendships and the standard of social circles once you've met good people. Because good people come in your life and they become very resourceful. They become your network. They become the solution to problems, and not in a like you dumping your problems on them type of way, but they become the bridges between where you are and where you plan to go next. They become a good stable foundation to feel human. And unfortunately, there are a lot of adults in this world who are still very childish. They're getting older, but they're not maturing. And when you take the time to work on yourself, you slowly start to realize, the powers that people have, including your own power. And sometimes it's a sad reality when you've kept somebody around you so long and you realize that their only power in the situation is and was and will probably always be their ability to manipulate. And you don't want to be around people who have powers that steer things in a negative direction, that keep you stuck, that keep you confused, that keep you hurting. Because then you don't feel like human. You don't feel like a human. You feel like a problem. You feel like a burden. You feel like you can be shelved at any moment. You feel like you're just being kept around for the value of what you can do. You feel like the person could care less whether you collect dust until they need you again. That's not a way to feel, and that will be a detriment to your mental health. You know, there are people in this world who have powers such as love and support and transparency that is healthy, and um, compassion and kindness. And some people have multiple of those good powers. But people who possess those powers in friendship, they make you feel human. They make you feel seen. They make you feel heard. They let you know that they feel you when they do and when they don't understand. And when you have that quality of friendship in your life, trials and tribulations, they pass without adding any extra stresses to them. Good times are celebrated always, be it small or big. Um, it just becomes a whole new world. Shout out to Princess Jasmine and Aladdin, right? And I want that for everybody. Anybody who I cross paths with, people who I knew in the past, all of that. I want for everybody to have quality people in their lives. And it took me a really long time to get to a point to where I can actually say that I have met quality people. And no, I won't say that we're the best of friends, because a lot of these people I just met, but we do have a lot of in common, and we do understand boundaries, and more than anything, we're mature. We have a true adult friendship that meets the standard of an adult friendship. Like Paul said in the Bible, when I was a child, I thought like a child, spoke like a child, I acted like a child. But when I became a man, and of course, he was obviously talking about himself, but we can make that a genderless statement. When I became a man, or when I became a woman, I put childish thinking, ways, and doing and speaking behind me. And if you're growing and your friends are not, or the people who you call your friends at this point in your life are not, it's okay to say that they have not put those childish ways behind them yet. But it is not your job to consider the us when you realize that you, yourself, are struggling to try to make whatever this social interaction you have with this person fit. When you have to start trying to make things fit into your life, it's taking up way too much space. And it doesn't mean that things can't change or that things won't change, but it does mean that as we progress, we have to remember that friendships are too valuable to be carelessly, or for anybody in the situation to treat it carelessly. And also, friendships are so important that the Bible says you got to be very selective on who you allow to be your friends. So valuable, friendships are so valuable and so important that the Bible warns you against bad company. And don't for a second think that as you progress and you start to see the things that you used to do that weren't healthy, don't think for a minute that the same people who used to look spotless, once you put childish ways behind you, you start to see the bad characteristics that they have. And if you don't flee from that, if you don't free yourself from that, doing all the work and having all the self-care talk and the self-care posts and the bubble baths and going to the therapy will mean nothing, because you're not doing the work to learn how to choose your better. You haven't matured to put childish ways behind you and think like a man or think like a woman and know how to choose what's better for you. Instead, you're still operating in childish ways, and you can only see things from an immature scope. And when you're looking at people in your life and relationships and things from a childish perspective, and you have not put those childish ways behind you, you don't know how to choose what's better for you. You choose what's convenient for you. You choose what you can manipulate. You choose what's disposable. You choose what's damaging. You choose what can hurt you. And I've been there. I've been growing all of this time, but this maturation that I'm sitting in right now is new. It's in full bloom. Actually, speaking of quality people, somebody sent me a little text the other day, and it said fluorescence, a state or period of being in bloom. And I love flowers, I really do. And it's crazy because a couple of years ago, somebody told me to go look at a sermon by Mike Todd talking about being planted, not buried. And that was almost 4 or 5 years ago. And I didn't know it would take this long for me to be fluorescent, but I tell you what, to be in fluorescence. But I tell you what, this is where I want to be. I want to be in my state of bloom. I don't want to be burdened by friendship, because the community and the culture that I come from teaches us that we're supposed to be loyal unto the end. And I don't agree with that. That's a childish way of thinking. That's a very codependent way of thinking. And I also believe that sometimes people will remain in friendships that no longer serve them because they think about, well, they did do this for me. So you think that you owe them a favor for the last favor. But if we got to count favors, and counting those favors is keeping us trapped and shackled to a person who is not growing with us, has no plans to grow, don't want to grow, that's not loyalty. That's a trap. At no point should what I've done for you and what you've done for me be enough for me not to free myself of something that's a detriment to me. And if it is, that's one of the primary flags to let you know that that's not really a friendship. I tell people all the time, if at any point you feel like your life would be better without me, let me go. I promise you, I'll be okay. Because for all I know, for the both of us, it could be very, very beneficial for you to go ahead and let me go. Because I want the same ability to make the decision that if my life is if you're no longer serving my life in a way that's beneficial, then I also want to have the freedom to say everything we did for each other was done out of love and kindness, compassion, for friendship, and those things will not change. But I have changed and I want to move on without being held to a standard that's beneath the standards that I have now. And as we go through life, that never gets easier. We just know that it's necessary. And so I think in this time where a lot of people are talking about friendships and wellness and all that stuff, I think it's just important to add to the conversation that adult friendships require a whole lot more maturity as time goes on. And it is not selfish to expect for people's maturation to be either in progress or working for their good. And if it's not, saying, well, we gotta cut it here. We gotta cut the cord here. We don't know what the future holds, but after so long, we gotta be real with ourselves and remember what the Bible says about friendship and allow ourselves to stay in fluorescence, to stay in a state of bloom. Because I don't feel like God created humans to suffer, and I don't feel like God created life to be hard. That's the reason why he gave us all of the wisdom he gave us. So that way, like the Bible says, we can see God's goodness before it's all over with. And that's what I want. And everybody don't want that. As you mature and your value system changes, some people's value system stays the same. And honestly, some people's value systems change and they just don't line up with where you're at. And that's not equally yoked. And there will be plenty of problems. if you still try to remain friends with people who have a different value system than you. So I guess all in all, what I'm saying is that wellness is a continuation. It's not a destination. And every day that you try, you'll get a result. And eventually all those results will become an outcome. And one day you'll be looking at an outcome that is blessed, not from the standpoint of something material that came into your life, but new ways of thinking, new ways of loving, new ways of socializing, new ways of communicating. And it'll be such a powerful outcome. And it'll have so much power. It will be the power of Christ, the power of God. And you won't be able to accept anything less than that. But you'll have all the confidence in the world to know that it is okay to stay there and keep operating from there, because it's good. And I don't know anybody who gets something good and wants to trade it in for something worser. Maybe people who haven't healed, or trade it in for something worse. But once you take the time to heal and do the work to truly heal and stay healed, good is good, and you recognize good, and you don't want to trade it for anything worse. So I wish everybody blessed wellness and maturity and the ability to be strong when necessary, especially when the strength you need is associated with the change you need to experience life in the fullness that it was designed to be experienced in. Have a good day.